If you've watched any of my recent videos about musical biopics, you know of my belief that the musical biopic, essentially at this point, constitutes an ongoing tragedy for Hollywood, a town that just has lost its way when it comes to condensing the life story of a musician of monumental impact into a 90-minute or 120-minute formula. It's not working. The only recent example I can think of in which one could potentially say, that actually worked out pretty well, condensing this inordinately famous person's life into that tiny package in terms of time frame and format, is Rocket Man, the Elton John biopic that I think came out around 2018, which at last check had an 89% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. That's great, but by and large, these things fall flat on their face. It didn't used to be that way. Certainly, at least not with the frequency with which it is the case now. I'm not going to rehash all of that. Watch my last couple of videos about the Amy Winehouse biopic for my whole argument about why the musical biopic in Hollywood is fundamentally broken and in need of repair, and that perhaps should be preceded by years of silence with respect to producing the musical biopic. This tragedy that is the musical biopic, within the context of Hollywood's inability to deliver one with any degree of authenticity or engagement or truth or interest or anything that surprises you beyond what you might find on a Wikipedia page about the movie's subject, is about to be perpetuated, it seems, by a biopic that has an April 18th, 2025 release date, as it currently stands. That very well could change between now and then, about a guy you might have heard of, a dude named Michael Jackson. It probably doesn't get a whole lot more famous than that. The challenge probably doesn't get much greater than a life like that, to pack that into some condensed formula. Good luck. The only other artist I can think of who's had a biopic done recently whose fame perhaps rivals Michael Jackson's would be Bob Marley. There's the One Love biopic that was out in theaters earlier this year. Critically, it's more of the same complaints about One Love that you see in so many other recent biopics, the ones that I've talked about of late, like Whitney Houston and Elvis and those. Listen to these criticisms of Bob Marley and One Love, which came out earlier this year. Sean P. Means in The Movie Critic said, anyone with knowledge of Marley's complicated life will feel like major sections are glossed over. You've heard plenty of that from me in the last two videos about biopics that I've made. Now, is Michael Jackson's life any less complicated than Bob Marley's? One would be pressed to argue that somehow it wasn't at least as complicated as Bob Marley's. Listen, we all know the story. From Michael Jackson's meteoric rise to fame to his catastrophic fall from grace in the courtroom and beyond. Another critic, John Serba, in The Decider said, the life of Bob Marley shouldn't feel like wallpaper with a great record playing in the background. There'll be a great record playing in the background with the Michael biopic. It's just called Michael next year. But will that great music be matched by a great film? There is abundant reason for pause in that regard, and I'll go over all of that today. Bruce R. Miller of the Sioux City Journal said that the Bob Marley biopic, One Love, glosses over much of the man's history and doesn't begin to tap into his impact on the music industry. Now, it really does appear that the Michael biopic is going to commit these same sins, essentially, that we keep seeing over and over again with one musical biopic after another. The trailer, I guess there was a trailer that was shown at CinemaCon in Las Vegas in April, doesn't appear to be available to the public. If I'm wrong about that, there's some weird fan trailer thing that was put together on YouTube that does not appear to be the actual trailer associated with the film I'm talking about, shown to the audience at CinemaCon, where they got a glimpse of the film. I was able to pull some information about the trailer that I'll share with you here in a minute. Beyond the release date, April 18, 2025, it's going to feature, reportedly, according to Variety and other sources, 30 Michael Jackson songs, more than 30, will recreate performances of several songs. And by the way, not just Michael Jackson, but starting with Jackson 5's performance of ABC on American Bandstand on February 21st, 1970. I'll link a story about that in the description of this video, because that was a monumental moment for the Jackson family. I mean, it was one of the moments that announced them as a force to reckon with in pop music. And from February 21st, 1970, ABC wasn't even, I don't think it was even had been released as a single yet, and they trotted out on that platform, American Bandstand, which was a brilliant stroke of marketing genius by the Jackson family. So starting there, I can confirm, based on reports that are coming out just this weekend as I'm talking to you here on June 2nd, that Thriller, the video for Thriller, will be among the songs and performances that are recreated, with Michael Jackson's nephew, Jaafar Jackson, who has no acting experience whatsoever, playing the lead role. I'll have much more to say on that in a bit, but Jaafar, you can see photos by a photographer named Kevin Mazur, who was there photographing these recreations of performances like Thriller and others. In the stories that I'll link to in the description of this video, you can see that, I mean, by all intents and purposes, Jaafar at least looks like Michael. I mean, physically, he's the recreation of Michael Jackson. I'll link to stories about his role in that Thriller movie in the description. I mean, that's kind of cool if they can pull it off, you know. It's weird that his nephew's playing him, having no acting experience. I'll get to that in a bit, but it's directed by Antoine Fuqua. Now, Fuqua has been around for a long time, and he previously did, interestingly, this is a guy who, in addition to being a total veteran Hollywood director, who's been around for decades and made some huge films like Training Day, Magnificent Seven, the Equalizer movies he's done. He also, more relevant, I would say, to this film than anything perhaps that he's done, is he did a 2019 documentary about Muhammad Ali called What's My Name? So this is a director with some experience telling life stories of monumentally famous figures. By the way, that documentary has a 96% critical rating on Rotten Tomatoes. So it's not just that he has the experience telling the life story of someone who is a hugely famous figure, but he clearly can do it with great skill and storytelling panache and all of it. This is a man whose hands are capable ones in which to place a story like Michael Jackson's. So the film does have at least that going for it. But man, when we just get to that trailer that was shown at CinemaCon and we hear some of the dialogue that emerged from some of the scenes therein, I start to scratch my head. Especially given that the script for Michael apparently is written by John Logan, the guy who wrote the script for Gladiator in 2000. Here again, here's a total veteran with incredible experience and accomplishment who clearly knows how to write a script. So again, you would think that's something that this film's got going for it. But then when you listen to some of the dialogue in this film, so apparently there's a scene in which Michael's mother, Catherine, who's played by an actress named Nia Long, is encouraging him to embrace his authentic self, basically. And she apparently says, there might be some people who think you're different, and that's going to make life a little harder for you. But you never were like anyone else, Michael. You have a very special light. So make that light shine onto the world. And then there's apparently a snippet of dialogue from Michael Jackson himself when he says, when I'm not on stage, everything feels foreign to me. I find this dialogue to be pretty trite and derivative of so many other biopics of famed musicians. I mean, right down to cliches like, shine your light, Michael. Cliches like, oh, when I'm on stage, that's when I feel most alive, and stuff like that. I mean, we've heard this stuff before. This is not exactly the stuff of a Sam Shepard play, okay? Okay. Now, apparently, preceding the showing of this trailer at CinemaCon, producer Graham King, the producer of this film, made some remarks that were in and of themselves, omens of perhaps the triteness to come, because apparently he is quoted as saying that the movie has, quote, elements of drama, intrigue, and emotional states. Okay. It's good for dramas to include actual drama. That's good. Guess we covered an important base there. It's even better when, films have emotional states in them. I too like my movies to have emotions in them. That's seems pretty rudimentary. I mean, I would hope most movies include emotions. Variety also reported that this producer, Graham King, is, quote, carefully considering, listen closely, because here is one of the triggers that tells you that disaster may await all of us upon the release of this film. He is, quote, carefully considering how to condense his complex life and legacy. How to condense his complex life and legacy. Condense. See, I've said this in my previous videos about biopics. The very anxiety that makes so many of these biopics so bland and superficial is just that. Oh, how do I stuff this immensely complicated, huge life into some tiny, compact, 90-minute formula? This movie, Michael Jackson, I mean, this is a movie about the soul of a man who was as talented as he was tortured. And the question to ask is not, are we covering all the highlights as we tell this guy's story, but, what are the closely observed human experiences that he had over the course of his life that reveal what's, the most that there can be revealed about that soul? What are those closely observed human experiences that show us something about the soul of this talented and tormented man that we can't pull off of a Wikipedia lookup? Those experiences that really reveal the man's soul might not have a whole lot to do with the standard highlights of his life, but they're going to tell us potentially a whole lot more about the subject. We these days, I mean, if you've gone to the movies lately, if you've, God forbid, taken a family of four, say, to a not matinee time showing of, maybe this weekend you went and took your kids and your wife to see If or something. That's the big film now with Ryan Reynolds in it, the John Krasinski kids film about imaginary friends. We pay to go to the movies these days. I mean, it's not cheap. You get your tickets, and that's, if you're going in prime time, that's I don't know, what is it, could run you $40-50. By the time you're done at the concession stand, you're ready to take out a personal loan on your way back into the theater with your family. And so, are we really going to pay today's absurd movie ticket prices merely to be shown what we could have shown ourselves by pulling up the subject's name on Wikipedia? Because that's definitely what we got with this Amy Winehouse biopic, Back to Black. That's definitely what we got with the Whitney Houston biopic, I Want to Dance with Somebody. That's definitely what we got with the Elvis biopic. It certainly sounds like, for the most part, that's what we're getting with the Bob Marley biopic. Bohemian Rhapsody, the Freddie Mercury and Queen biopic, on which I believe, by the way, Graham King also was a producer. Same thing. I mean, Freddie Mercury, watch 30 seconds of his Live Aid performance and then explain to me how you're supposed to compact that personality into a format as unforgiving as and unyielding as 90 minutes. So this is another sign that it's just not going to go well with this flick. The other key indicator that this Michael biopic is potentially headed for disaster is the family is too heavily involved. If you've looked at my prior two videos about biopics, you know that Amy Winehouse's family way too close to the production of that film. Mitch, her dad, way too involved with framing her narrative in a way that he was comfortable with. That has nothing to do with the truth. That has nothing to do with art. That is everything about his personal agenda with respect to how he, not in addition to his own daughter, are portrayed for public consumption. Well, listen to this about the family's involvement in this Michael biopic. Variety, of course, gets to the issue of the allegations that swirled around Michael Jackson for much of the latter part of his life. Disturbing as hell. You know, child sexual abuse. Now, this is what Variety reports, quote, Michael will deal with the abuse allegations, but some critics wonder how the filmmakers, again, listen closely, will contend with the more controversial parts of Jackson's fame, given the involvement of Michael Jackson's estate, as well as the fact that two of its executors, John Branca and John McClane, are producers of the film. Two executives of Michael Jackson's estate are producers of his biopic? I'm the only one who finds this to be a conflict of interest rife with alarm as to the film's quality and integrity. Surely not. That's the kind of criticism that's going to surface in reviews of the film when it comes out. A capable critic is going to have questions, okay, and is going to see through that. I don't think we have to wonder. We know, we know how that's going to go. As I said in my prior videos about biopics, one of the signature failings of the musical biopic in recent years is that it glosses over the uglier or grittier aspects of the subject story. It's a whitewash. Here we have something as ugly as it gets, child sexual abuse, and we have this revelation of the family's heavy involvement in the film's production. There is absolutely zero chance that aspect of Michael Jackson's life will be managed with the impartiality that it warrants. No chance whatsoever. Now, putting a finer point on that concern is the following from another Variety story, a separate piece about this biopic, the title of which alludes to the director of a documentary called Leaving Neverland, Dan Reed. Now, Leaving Neverland was very unsparing in its inquiry into these child sexual allegations, telling the stories of two men who were boys at the time, ages 10 and 7, who continue to press this case, by the way. People think this case, that Jackson's legal woes are settled. I think there's generally an overarching sense in our society that, well, that's all in the past. I mean, that he went in court and did all that, right? No, actually, it's not. I'll get to that. There's more to come in court. Here, let's see, 15 years since Michael Jackson's death on June 25th, 2009 at age 50. This separate Variety story says, even for a musical by the way, the title of this Variety story, as I was about to say, alludes to Leaving Neverland's director Dan Reed's public comment that the draft of the script is, as he put it, startlingly disingenuous. Okay? And the Variety story goes on to say this, even for a musical biopic, which must secure the rights of the music of whomever it is depicting, necessitating a partnership with the subject of their estate, Michael, the title of the biopic, is unusually entangled with the Jackson organization. Branca and co-executor John McClane are producers of the film, and Jackson is played as an adult by his nephew Jaafar Jackson. According to a source close to the production, at least one member of Jackson's family is on the set every day. At least one member of Jackson's family is on the set every day. So, it's no wonder that when you pull up stories about this biopic and you see quotes from those involved, they'll say things like, well, Michael was a complicated guy. Well, we just want to humanize Michael. Yeah, I understand there's this stuff, this ugly stuff in his life, but we want to humanize the guy too. And, he was complicated. He lived a complicated life. Here's a direct quote from Graham King, who said, Michael's life was complicated. As a filmmaker, I look to humanize, but not sanitize, and present the most compelling, unbiased story I can capture in a single feature film and let the audience decide how they feel after watching it. Reed, however, the director of Leaving Neverland, he's not buying that. Reed said this stuff about, Michael being a complicated guy who warrants humanization is distasteful at best. The Variety story says, quote, Leaving Neverland chronicles in detail the allegations by Wade Robeson and James Safechuck that Jackson maintained separate, years-long sexual relationships with them as children, starting when Safechuck was 10 and Robeson was 7. Reed read a draft of the Michael screenplay, which he calls startlingly disingenuous, for making a point to discredit Robeson and Safechuck's contention that Jackson was a pedophile. Reed says of the script, which he read He read a draft of the script. Variety makes the point that, listen, the script could change, sure. The version of the script that he saw is one that he describes as follows. Jackson is only ever seen caring for children with childhood cancer, or dancing with a little girl in a wheelchair, or tucking up multiple little boys, mostly his nephews at sleepovers. It feels, listen closely again, like the creators of the movie have been stuck in a room with John Branca and just told what to write. Here we go again, with another whitewash in the making, it seems. You know, as I said, I think people have the impression that the legal troubles surrounding these cases are settled, but the fact is, it was ordered by a California appeals court just last year that the case involving the allegations of these two men must proceed to trial. It hasn't yet. It may, in fact, proceed to trial before or even during the release of Michael's biopic in April of 2025. The plaintiff's attorney said this to Variety. He thinks delays by the Jackson Estates legal team will likely push the trial past the scheduled April 2025 release of the biopic. Now, Variety goes on to say, that cuts both ways. A trial before the film's release could depress ticket sales, you think? With roughly $155 million budget, a $155 million budget for this movie, the film would need to be one of the highest grossing musical biopics of all time to clear a profit in theaters. And Variety also speculates that, if the trial gets underway before the film's release, what a catch-22 for the actors in the film, right? As the story says, it could put more pressure on the movie's cast and crew for appearing to take a side on Jackson's innocence. One of those actors seems to completely miss the point there, or is deliberately trying to sidestep these issues. An actor named Miles Taylor, who's going to be portraying John Branca in the movie, said, regardless of what your opinion may be, Michael is one of the greatest. He deserves a movie to be made. I'm excited to be a part of it. But that's a straw man argument. No one is saying that Michael doesn't deserve to have a film made about him. No one is saying that Michael Jackson wasn't good at what he did. The point here is not just to make a movie about the guy because his life justifies such treatment, but to make a movie with integrity about that life. And that's where there appears to be significant concern. How? When you have a member of the Jackson family on set every day, when you have two executors of the Jackson family estate themselves being producers of the film, is this film supposed to have much, if any, integrity to the way it presents the story of this flawed but fascinating human being? Now, as for Jackson's nephew Jaafar playing Michael Jackson, I mean, Graham King, Antoine Fuqua, there's a photographer who was on set snapping shots of, as I mentioned earlier, of these recreations of certain moments in Jackson's career, like the filming of the Thriller video. They're glowing with an exuberance about Jaafar. Graham King says that Jaafar embodies Michael in a way that no other actor ever could. Fuqua said, it's Jaafar who embodies Michael. It goes beyond the physical resemblance. It's Michael's spirit that comes through in a magical way. You have to experience it to believe it. The photographer Kevin Mazur said, the way he looks and acts, his mannerisms, everything. He's Michael Jackson. For everyone who didn't have the chance to see Michael perform live during his lifetime, this is how it was. But this is strange too, is it not? Jaafar Jackson has zero acting experience. Look him up on, I'll go ahead and put his Rotten Tomatoes profile link in the description of this video. There's nothing on it except this. Nothing. So to me, this is another indication of just how closed off to the outside world the Jackson family remains. They could not bring themselves to make a biopic about Michael Jackson unless one of their own was playing the lead role, someone who has zero acting experience. Listen, I am as big a fan of Michael Jackson's music as anyone. I grew up with Michael Jackson's music. I remember what it felt like to be in the backseat of my father's Buick in 1983 when I was 4 years old, to hear Vincent Price's haunting laughter bellowing out of the car stereo, and to see my father turn to me grinning, laughing about how spooky it was to me, his toddler son at the time. And I remember giggling and feeling the chills course through my body at the sound of that voice. And then the song, which was utterly brilliant and so catchy and danceable and unforgettable. This music lit me on fire when I was a kid. I remember singing Man in the Mirror to the Mirror when I was a little boy and really thinking about its message. You know? I'm looking at the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. And I'd be like 8 years old thinking, you know, yeah, 8-year-old me, I need to change my ways. I would really think about the song that way. I mean, this was music of profound impact in my life as a kid. But that's not the whole story with Michael. And if you're going to tell the story, you need to tell it whole. And if the people telling that story are people with vested interests, as undoubtedly the executors of the man's estate absolutely have, how is that supposed to happen? I will end with this question I asked at the beginning of my last video about musical biopics focusing on Amy Winehouse. Why does Hollywood want to continue to do this to itself? Why? Here we are with a guy, Michael Jackson, whose impact was indescribably massive. This man changed the world. And along the way, he may have changed some young people's lives in a very dark manner. And maybe we'll find out once and for all when this case proceeds to trial, perhaps practically in conjunction with the release of this biopic. That timing is in and of itself chilling. But to me, maybe watch Leaving Neverland to get, at least watch it hand in hand with the biopic to get both sides of the story. And maybe that's how you'll really get what Graham King is purporting to want here, which is, well, we'll just present the facts and let the audience decide. But you're presenting the facts through a lens that is colored by the presence of his family. Apparently, the daily presence of his family. As far as I'm concerned, that doesn't end well. We'll see. I hope I'm wrong, because, you know, a man who lived a life with as much impact as this deserves for that life to be told in a way that is observant of the truth, you know? Does justice to the truth underlying the man's life. Will this film do that? I highly doubt it. I'm certainly open to having my mind changed. Maybe let me know what your thoughts and anticipations are with respect to this biopic. Are you excited nonetheless? Do you share these concerns? What is the pocket to strike with telling a story as complicated as this one in a manner that is truthful, in a manner that has integrity? I'd love to hear from you about this forthcoming biopic, which, according to what I'm seeing, may turn out to be every bit as regrettable as so many other recent biopics that Hollywood has churned out in the last 5 years or so.